Welcome to the Your Fitness Money Coach podcast, where we help fit pros become financially fit. I've been in the fitness industry for over 25 years and currently own a successful facility on Long Island, New York. On the financial side, my wife and I paid off over $130K in non-mortgage debt over a decade ago, and now I'm passionate about helping fit pros with a solid plan to put money in their bank, time freedom in their days, and hope for a brighter future of health, wealth, and happiness. I'm really excited again for today's guest. I have with me somebody that you may have heard of. I know I have. So I'm going to actually share my experience with this individual. I don't know if he knows this yet, but my guest today is Gilad Janklowicz. He is most often just known as Gilad, and Gilad has been the star of Bodies in Motion. I don't know if he likes that word star, but we'll get into that. Bodies in Motion since, I don't know if you've been born this long, but since 1983. I've never shared my age on this episode, but I will say that I was only just a little toddler at that point. And he has also produced other shows as well that we will get into. But I just want to really give you a warm introduction and a warm welcome, Gilad. I just really appreciate you taking your time to share with our audience.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to be here and nice to be able to share whatever I can with your audience, for sure.
Absolutely. I would love, well, let me share my story real quick. I don't know if he's listening, but my buddy Mike that I grew up with, I remember working out with Gilad. I'll just say that I'm a married man now, but there may or may not have been some attractive women in the videos with Gilad, and we would work out with Gilad as teenagers, trying to get pumped, just like Gilad was. So thank you for that. That was, oh my goodness, that was decades ago, and
Yes,
you're still doing it.
I'm still doing it. Listen, I wanted to mention to you the fact that you're married now doesn't mean that the girls are still not beautiful. No, they're still gorgeous, right? The nice thing, I think that when I pick people for the show, I'm trying to really get somebody who can exude fitness, health, and welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to my world. Because it can be taken in two directions. But that's the type of personality usually that I look on the show, and that's why a lot of the people that are on my show over the years have become pretty much part of the family of our viewers, because they kind of grew with them along with the show. Some of the people on my show have been with me since the very beginning, since 1983, 84.
Wow.
And they're still on the show with me. So, back then, for example, I have this one girl, she was 10 years old when she first participated on the show. And now she's an attorney in Hawaii, and she's, you can make the calculation how old she is today, but she's still on the show with us, very active, as are many that have been with me over the years. So they're all part of the show and continue to be part of the show. And, I think that one of the unique things that we do is that we make that the longevity and the way things are evolving, and the audience can really participate and appreciate that the people that have been with me for so long are still there, and they're still working out with them. So they know them by name, and they know them by by what's happening in their life, because I always kind of throw in a little bit of information about the people that are with me on the show.
That is so cool. So yeah, they could have been a teenager like I was, or maybe they were 20 years old now. They're just the young age of 60, still working out with you. That's quite astonishing.
Yes.
I want to get into like your background. I'm curious, how you ended up in Hawaii, and I know there's an Olympic piece to this. There's the Israeli military, I believe. So I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit about your background.
Yes, of course. So I was born in Israel to American parents. I served in the Israeli army. I was also, that's mandatory. Back then, it was completely mandatory for men. When I was a teenager at the age of 18. I also was a track and field. I excelled in track and field, and eventually made it to the national team in the decathlon. Ended up breaking the national record and becoming an Olympic hopeful. At that point, after my military service, I decided to come to Los Angeles to train with some of the top athletes in the world back then in the decathlon. One of my coaches at UCLA was himself a decathlon record holder back in the late 60s. And I trained with him and his guidance for a while. And while I was doing that, I also started teaching classes, like exercise classes, because that was also part of my background in the military.
Mm.
That sort of evolved into more, the wave of dance exercise that was starting to become very popular back then in the late 70s with Gilda Marx, Jane Fonda. She kind of made it known. So I kind of made a little bit of a turn into that field. As far as the decathlon is concerned, I ended up having a pretty severe injury to my Achilles tendon, which put me out of competition for at least a couple of years. I was able to do other things, but I wasn't able to compete on the track. So that's how I was able to, maintain and be able to teach classes, be able to develop that part of my work. And eventually I had to retire from track and field because I was getting, too old to pursue it. And the injury was kind of frustrating. It wasn't letting go. So I dove into another world of fitness, which is a group exercise class.
How did that go for you? Were you I'm assuming you were disappointed. What was your attitude like? How did you handle that when you had that injury?
Well, of course. I mean, it was, as a teenager, it was my life dream to make it to the Olympics. So that's all I woke up in the morning with that dream and went to sleep at night with that dream. So when I found out that my Olympic dream is basically over, it was an adjustment for sure. It was a difficult time. I was a student at California at UCLA. The transition took a little time for me to accept the fact that, okay, this dream is over. Now let's find something else to do.
Yeah.
So, yes, but I'm happy that I did, because had I been, in retrospect, hindsight is always 2020. But in retrospect, had I continued the track and field career, I would have probably made it maybe to the Olympics. I wouldn't have gotten a gold or silver or bronze medal. I wasn't on that level, but I would have made it to the Olympics and participate. And I probably would have been forgotten, and I would have gone to do something else. I would have studied something else in school, and never have done what I'm doing today. Still to this day. So it was a lemonade made into lemons made into a lemonade.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting how we just never know like where our life is going. We want to know, we want to like control things, and we just can't. We don't know when we're going to get hurt, when we're going to miss an opportunity. And then things have a way of bringing us to a different place, a place we never expected. I'm assuming you didn't just say then, okay, you know what, now I'm going to create this show and I'm going to do it for 40 years.
Oh, absolutely not. I had no idea. In fact, when I started teaching classes in Los Angeles back in the late 70s, fitness was kind of like in the diaper stage, if you will, as far as the group exercise classes. My first teaching job was at a place called World for Men. And back then, I know people today don't realize this, but back then, men and women did not exercise in the same facility. So there was World for Men, and in the World for Men, only the men exercised and had weightlifting classes, and we had a group exercise classes. Across the street was World for Women.
Wow.
That's and sometimes the instructors from the World for Men would teach at the women's club, and the women's club instructors would teach at the men's club, but there was no crossover between the members. It was very strict. Men are training with the men, women are training with the women. Later on, through clubs like the Sports Connection, etc., in Los Angeles in the late 70s, it became co-ed. And at that point, I was one of the pioneers of the group exercise classes, as you know them, that started this whole movement back then at the World for Men. And then we took it over to the Sports Connection and developed it there. And then, of course, there was always the Gilda Marx studio, which was one of the pioneers in this industry. And then Jane Fonda came along and made it sort of like a household name and held it in history, really, because until then it was just held in the clubs. Now, back then, you figure not and it's not like today where, it's so available and there's so many clubs and so many studios and so much available for people to choose from. Back then, it was very limited. There were only so many clubs. Speaking of Jack LaLanne, I remember coming to New York in the 80s, and there was late 70s, and there was still the Jack LaLanne European Health Spa.
Mm.
And that was sort of like the chain back then. By the way, Jack LaLanne, I ended up doing my first television appearance ever was on the Jack LaLanne show back in 1982.
Oh, wow. That's cool. What was that like? What did that look like?
Well, that's at the time. I was just in Hawaii. I got a job offer in Hawaii at a health club. As a result of my sort of reputation in California, I got a job offer in Hawaii to teach and to train instructors at the Honolulu club.
Mm.
And then the idea of doing a fitness show, a local fitness show in Hawaii, we started playing with the idea with some friends of mine over there and the people that were taking my class. And I wanted to see how something that is done. And Jack LaLanne had his show. It was nationally syndicated. And I decided, okay, I'm going to go back to Los Angeles. I'm going to apply to be on his show. I'd like to meet him and kind of, poke his brain about what I could do. So he hosted me on his show back then and said to me, young man, I believe you'll have your own show one of these days. You're good. And
I'm sorry. I want to stop you there. How old were you at this point?
I was 27, 28.
And I'm just curious, what did that do to you when he said that to you? What did that do to your attitude, mindset? Did it affect you?
Of course it did. Yes, of course it did. Because, this Jack LaLanne is a living legend. And if he took to me on such a level, I said, wow, this is interesting. So there must be something there that I can really offer as well. And that kind of gave me a little boost when I went back to Hawaii and said, yes, this is an interesting thing to do. I think I could do this. And I started putting together a group of people and investors, and we started our first fitness show locally in Hawaii.
What did that look like? Whatever you're comfortable sharing in terms of putting that together. What did that involve in terms of planning, financials?
Right. Well, I had not a cent to my name at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, only debts from school, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And when I decided to do the show, I wasn't able to do it by myself. Plus, I had absolutely no business experience whatsoever. Mm-hmm. I mean, I knew an exercise class, a pretty good one too. But as far as business and setting things up and how to get a company going, I was clueless.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I had people in my class that were, very affluent in Hawaii and Honolulu at the time, who kind of took me in and said, "Listen, we'll get you going. I think you have something here. We want to help you." And that's how it started. I was able to get a group of investors together. One of the general managers of a local channel in Hawaii, Channel 13, he was one of the students in my class. And he said, "Yes, let's do this. I'll give you the time. Let's get some investors together, and I'll give you the airtime." So when I started thinking about the fitness show, I immediately thought, I'm in Hawaii. This is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. Until that time, all the fitness shows that I've seen, and there were a few, not only Jack LaLanne's, but there were a few other shows. They were all indoors, and I figured, I can take the concept, put it in the outdoors, but to shoot outdoors was very expensive, and I had to start locally in Hawaii, indoors, inside of a studio, which I did. So the first season of shows we did was inside of a studio in Hawaii, with the goal that if this is working and audience accept it, I'll get another chance to do it outdoors. And that's what we did. And then when I started doing the outdoor shows, I called up on an old friend from Los Angeles, a gentleman named Arnold Schwarzenegger, heard about. At the time when I was still in Los Angeles, I was teaching classes at the Sports Connection, and he was preparing for his first Conan movie. And he would come to my classes together with his fiance back then, Maria Shriver, and would take the classes in the evening. And after everybody went home, he'd say, Gilad, I want to work out some more. So I would give him a little extra time with, jumping jacks, etc. He was just coming off being 7-time Mr. Olympia, and he was huge. He was really, really big. He said his goal was to become a little bit smaller and a little bit quicker with his movements. Why he opted to take the workout classes with me, because he's doing a lot of fast, quick movements and jumping and moving and dance moves, etc. And he was really, really very dedicated. Eventually, he ended up using me in his book, his first book that he did for bodybuilding for men. I was one of the guys that was sort of like a model in his book. Stayed in touch, and we stayed in contact. And when I started,
what was that book called?
Bodybuilding for Men, Arnold's Bodybuilding for Men.
I think I probably read that book in high school.
Yes, it was a very popular book at the time. So when I thought of doing an outdoor show, I called upon Arnold. I said, "Why don't you come to Hawaii and shoot some shows with me? And I think that'll help me also, get the show known." And he did, and it did that work. And eventually, we were able to do a short season in Hawaii outdoors. Some of them participated, Arnold, and I was able to take that show and present it to ESPN through an agent. And ESPN at the time didn't have any fitness shows at all on air, and they said that they're looking at a bunch of different ones, different options. And took a little while, but finally in 1985 we got a contract from ESPN, and we were the first fitness show, daily fitness show on ESPN. Started in 1985.
What did that contract look like? Was it like for a certain period of time, or what did that look like?
Yes, it was for 1 year with an option for another.
Okay.
So 1985, I started with my first, back then it was a block of what they call 65 shows. It's a 13-week block that repeats 4 times. So we did that program. We did the first 65 shows. And at the end of, towards the end of 1985, they requested another season. And then another season, and then another season, another season. We ended up on 11 years on ESPN.
Wow. When you shoot all those shows, how does that look? Is it done in a certain period of time? Like, do you do them throughout the course of a week, or how does that shooting look?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, it's when we first started the show, to shoot outdoors is much more expensive than to shoot in a studio. I mean, it's at least 4 or 5 times more expensive.
Wow.
So when you go outdoors, you want to maximize the day, because once you're out there, you're spending a lot of money very fast. So I got myself to be able to do 7 shows in a day, 7 shows in one day. And that was the format that we worked with all these years. We would, if we needed to shoot 65 shows, we would shoot 5 shows, 6 shows, 7 shows in a day. Shoot it for a period of several weeks. We would shoot maybe once a week only. It would be, I'll tell you, in Hawaii, it's a very strong sun, and in addition to that, we have very strong lighting to balance the sun. So to sit there out there all day long in the sun and bounce around,
and you got to keep your energy up.
You got to keep your energy up. You got to be in really, really good shape. You got to, control your voice, because the voice, with the water and the sweat and your voice can go very quickly. So it's a technique that I was able to develop over time to enable me to do, 6 or 7. Sometimes we did as many as 8 shows in one day.
So what happened with the ESPN after the 11 years? What happened with the show?
They basically stopped with this exercise block that they had. And I, I had since I was the producer of the show, I held the rights to the show. So I continued on with Fox Sports. And then after Fox Sports came WebMD, which contracted us to do more shows as well in 2001. And after MD came Discovery, which contracted us to do another show. So it's been keeping me busy all these years, I have to say.
And where is it now?
Right now it's on JLTV nationwide. It's
Yep.
on demand, which you can basically see all of my shows throughout the decades.
What does your schedule look like now in terms of shooting? Is it the same? Are you still doing that many shows in a short period of time?
Well, the goal is yes, to do the same. However, since before the COVID, we haven't done anything. It's
Okay.
been a block. But now we're planning, since 2023 marks our 40th year on air, we're planning to do our 40th anniversary shows for Bodies in Motion, which will be sort of like a quite an accomplishment, I think, because there's no other show out there that's been on for 40 years.
Are you gonna bring Arnold back?
I'm gonna try.
Nice.
At point he will agree, but I'm gonna definitely try to do that. Another fan of my show, I found out years later, is Sugar Ray Leonard, the boxer.
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw him at the airport one day, and he kind of I saw him. I said, "Oh my God, that's Sugar Ray Leonard there, the boxer." And before I knew it, he comes up to me and says, "Hey, I know who you are. You're Gilad. I jump around with you in the morning to warm up." I'm going to try to get him on the show as well.
Oh, cool. Now I want to celebrate that with you. I mean, that's really quite a big deal. 40 years, longest in history. So it's unbelievable. You got to feel good about that, and that's exciting to have that special anniversary coming up in 2023. Those original investors, are they still involved, or did they?
No, they eventually, what happened is that one of my investors in Hawaii, one of my main investors, and it was also sort of like my, he's the guy who really taught me how to start a business and how to do the whole thing. He eventually wanted to buy everybody out, and everybody agreed. And that's what happened. So we were partners for many, many years. After ESPN quit the shows, I bought his share out, and I did it on my own. So today it's just all under my own production company, Gilad Productions.
Very cool. Well, that's really great to be able to dive into the kind of the history of Bodies in Motion. I know there's a lot more. We do want to kind of respect people's drive time here, so we're gonna break this up. So we're gonna kind of wind down here. I'm gonna just ask you a couple of final questions for this episode.
Okay.
Throughout all that experience, through doing the show and your career, what would you say is either, to give you two options here, either the biggest mistake that I'm assuming you learned from, or just the biggest lesson in general?
Okay, the biggest, it's an interesting thing, because when you reach a point in your business career where you come to a crossroads. For example, with ESPN, I'll give an example, so it's happened so long ago. This was in 1996. ESPN said, I was the producer of my show, so I held the rights to the show. ESPN came and said to me, if you want to continue on air with us, the only way we're willing to do it is the rights belong to us in perpetuity from now on. And I said, I can't say that I was in a very strong position at that point. I was not. But it didn't feel right to me to give up all this work that we'd done for 11 years, 12 years at that point, and give it all away. In that case, my destiny is no longer in my hands, to someone else. It turned out that my inclination not to give it to them was the right move, because a year later, they had a few other shows at that point that were continuing to air in 1996. By 1997, 98, I don't remember the exact date, they moved that whole block out, but they still own the rights. So those producers that did the other shows lost their property. I maintained my property. So my instinct was right. I had to fight with them. And it was, it was pretty much, either you give it to us or we're taking you off the air.
Mm.
And I said, okay, take me off the air then. I mean, I'm saying it very nonchalantly now,
Yeah.
but and it was like, oh my God, they're taking us off the air. How am I going to make a living? If
Yeah.
on the toilet, I'm very concerned.
Yeah.
In retrospect, it was the right decision
Mm-hmm.
from a business perspective because until today, I own all my rights.
Yeah, so there's a couple of lessons there, but big one for me is your instinct matters.
The instinct really matters. I think if you follow your instincts and your instincts are real,
Mm-hmm.
even if you lose, even if it doesn't work out for you, at least you go, you know what? I was honest with myself. I did the right thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Point. It just didn't work out. So I'll continue going. It doesn't matter. At least, it's like going into a race and you do your best. You feel like you've done your best, but you're not number one or number two or number three. It really doesn't matter. You just
Yeah.
did your best. And that's
Yeah.
what counts. And
That.
that's the thing people all the time, don't compete with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Compete with yourself. Compete with who you were yesterday. Try to be better today than you were yesterday. Learn from what you did today before, and apply it to today and to tomorrow.
Love that. But the final question for now is: are you a reader?
I what?
Reader, books.
Like reading material. Yeah. I have to be honest that I used to be a lot better at reading,
Mm-hmm.
And since this whole internet revolution, I have slacked off on it.
Yeah.
So I.
Yeah. So it's okay. The reason I asked that is because the question I want to ask you is what's a book that made a big difference in your life? Could have been previous, but it doesn't have to be a book. It could be something you watched online, or it could be a podcast, or anything that you feel has made a difference in your life. Could be financial or otherwise.
I'm trying to think quickly here. I know that after this broadcast, it's going to come to my mind.
Yeah.
Right now, I think of anything specific.
I'll give you another option. Then the other option is, what is Gilad's favorite movie? So you're flipping through the channels, and it doesn't matter what's going on. You got to keep it on because.
Okay, so there's a few.
Okay.
There's always a Clint Eastwood movie that I'll stop no matter what.
Nice.
A couple of nights ago, I happened to flip through the channel while looking at the World Cup.
Uh-huh.
I happened to see the Shawshank Redemption.
Oh my goodness, you said it. That's my favorite movie.
And I said, this is absolutely on my top 10 list of all-time movies.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be my answer if you were to ask me.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that asked me if I stopped and saw. So that was definitely a motivation. I think what motivates me most is the human element of the in the film.
Yes. Oh yeah.
The friendship, which was just unbelievable. It really brought it, brings tears to your eyes. But those are the type of things that yes.
Awesome. Well, there's a lot more we're gonna dive into, but for now, thanks so much for being on the show, Gilad.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and keep your bodies in motion.
Well, that concludes today's show. Thank you once again for listening. And as I often ask, please share this. If you know somebody who could benefit from the content, just share this episode or any other episodes. And if you could be so kind to leave a review, a 5-star review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever else, that will help us spread the message. Definitely appreciate it. If you need any help, or you need to reach out for any reason, you could email me at financialfreedompt@gmail.com. That's financialfreedompt@gmail.com. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And once again, thank you for listening to the Your Fitness Money Coach podcast.